Welcome back to the Nutrition Connection podcast, the show where science meets storytelling. I'm your host, Dr. Kristen Hicks-Roof, dietitian, researcher, and lifelong advocate of the role of nutrition, health, and wellness. Each episode, I sit down with dietitians and nutrition experts, leaders from all over the food and healthcare sectors who touch nearly every aspect of our lives. So whether you're a student, a seasoned professional, or someone simply curious about food, nutrition, and health, this podcast is just for you. The views, thoughts, and comments on this podcast do not reflect those of my employer nor the employers of my guests. So let's go ahead and get connected. I'm super excited to bring on a longtime friend of mine. We have Dr. Wesley McWhorter. He is the Vice President of Lifestyle Medicine at Suvita Healthcare. Welcome to the show, Wes.
Hey, thanks for having me on. So glad to be on.
So we have crossed paths with both of our former identities. So Wes and I were both academics at the university, different. I was in Florida, he was in Texas. And we both looked at kind of this nutrition education for physicians and integration of nutrition as part of medical support systems. So lifestyle medicine is really your bread and butter. And we're going to get deeper into all the credentials behind your name, as you're a chef, you're a dietitian. I would say you're a jack of all trades. But let's start from the beginning, Wes. Like, what inspired you and made you want to become a nutrition professional?
You know, people tend to say, I've always done this or always done that. That's not where I'll start. I'll start with when I was in grade school. So early on, right? But it was the family health condition. So my grandfather specifically having a heart attack, and loved my grandfather, but he did not like that healthy diet that the doctor recommended. Not at all. I remember him being, I was at my grandmother's house, and she had made this breakfast with, the dry toast or whatever it was, no fat, whatever, back in the, the early 2000s we were recommending. And he was ornery about it. It was like, I'm not eating this, I'm not doing it. And I joke about it now, but he didn't like that, right? Like a lot of people, right? Fast forward a few years, he's not following the recommendations, which, heart disease, et cetera, it's related to what we eat or don't eat. And he had a stroke, and he passed away a few years after that. So if you view it through that lens, that's really what inspired me. I was already, like playing sports and interested in what is nutrition, but the idea of, can we make healthy food taste good? That's what inspired me on this journey to become a dietitian. Now, it took a really roundabout pathway to become a dietitian. But that's how that was the initial push into the field, I would say.
It's so funny because as I bring on people from all different niche and sectors, everyone kind of has this very jagged route to get there. Like, they may know that that's where they want to go, but it's all over the map to get there. So especially with you, with your chef background, what came first? Did you want to do the dietitian first, or did you realize kind of the food is medicine chef first?
I wish I could be 20 years ago, I knew this is how the field would shape up. I did not, right? I'll answer the question in a second, but I remember one of my first jobs as a chef, as a young, graduate of culinary school. Told the chef I had majored in nutrition. He told me I was an idiot. That's not going anywhere, right? He's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's not going anywhere. Who would want that, right? So that was the time period, early 2000s when I was going through culinary schools. Nutrition, what does this have to do with anything? Maybe a few athletes and some uber wealth, but beyond that, there's no future here. But for me, what I envisioned, what at least I thought I saw was, well, if food is related to our health and the healthy food is not, inspiring to consume, we should do something about that. So I didn't know what a dietitian was at the time. I learned about that in culinary school. So, down in South Florida, I went to culinary school, a place called Florida Culinary Institute. Doesn't exist anymore. It was Lincoln Culinary Institute, and then something else after that. But got a great education, learned a lot, but also had a dietitian that taught us nutrition classes. And that's where I learned, okay, this is what a dietitian is, and sounds like I am going to have to do some additional education to do the things I want to do. So it's kind of like you have an idea, but the pathway is not, fully there for you until you go down that road.
But I think sometimes when you get that pushback, I remember during my PhD, I was wanting to change advisors because the research was just really not in my lane. I wanted to do nutrition education for physicians. I kind of knew as I was already a clinician. And someone told me, this is the worst decision you're making in your life. An academic told me that. And that's because when you're in a PhD program, changing advisors halfway through is not always the smartest
Yeah.
decision, but sometimes you
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
make.
Yep.
But I think sometimes that when you follow that passion of you're like, I know where this is going, or I know where I want
Hmm.
to drive this path, you just kind of have to do it, even though you may get pushback from maybe your family or your collaborators or external people. So it sounds like both of us kind of had that. We're like, yeah, we're doing
Yeah.
it anyways.
It's kind of like in every step, right? So like, it, I would tell students, former professor, like, if you have an idea and you're willing to put through it, like that's great, right? But you're gonna have to have thick skin because people are going to disagree, and sometimes they mean well. Like they're trying to look out for you because that's in their lane. That's what they see. They don't always see the bigger picture. And I think for a lot of people that may, be on that kind of that outside, little push agendas a little further than they normally would, I guess. It can be a little bit of a lonely road. So that was me in culinary school. I worked. She graduated. Worked for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. Restaurant, country club. I got a job as a private chef, and that was really what allowed me to go back to school, pay for school, become a dietitian. And in that role, it was great, right? So you learn your culinary training, traditionally French trained, a lot of global cuisine within our school, a lot of experience with other chefs that know their trade, right? And really learning how to be a chef, not, hey, go to culinary school and then become a dietitian, but really working as a chef. And I got this job as a private chef. One client lived on their property for a while. That's actually how I ended up in Texas. Worked for them for almost 9 years. During that time, again, my employer, she had a few different, health conditions and had a few different rules, right, for her. And there weren't a lot of rules, but it was like, I don't want to eat the same thing. I want something different all the time. I want you to be creative, which as a young chef, you're like, that's amazing, right? I get to go purchase whatever foods that for me look amazing, right? And prepare them and, in a healthier way to help her get to her goals. So that was a great role for many years for me to really hone my craft, do a lot of, gardening and, kind of led me into the produce prescription ideas and the food as medicine even more. And then really also understanding you have these tools, right? I'm a chef. I forgot the portion of me becoming a personal trainer during that side. So I was doing the personal trainer, the chef piece, right? So I have these tools, but also that behavior change is still not happening with that client. So I get through my undergrad and inspired to keep going through the education because it's like what's missing here, right? Like why can we not get that shift with someone? When we have all the tools in our toolbox, right? We got the culinary, got the fitness, have these pieces, but still I'm not able to understand how I can actually get that change for them on that personal level. So that inspired me again to continue my education, not just stay where I was. So originally I'm like, okay, I'll go be, a chef. And then it's like each step of the way, it keeps being like, okay, well, this makes sense and this makes sense and this makes sense. Didn't start out thinking that way though.
Yeah, I think that as everyone who's listening, I told you he's a jack of all trades, right? You got all these credentials and you also have many different skills and expertise that in a way they were all built each other to what you do today. So let's talk a little bit about your career path. So you ended up becoming a dietitian. You were already a chef. You were already a personal trainer. So like what kind of roles have you had since becoming that dietitian ultimately to get you as a vice president really in this food as medicine arena?
I'm gonna step back and talk about undergrad because I think this is probably an important thing for some of the listeners, especially any student. Like going through undergrad was the hardest thing to me, more than my master's, more than my doctorate, because it was this shift back into an undergraduate. You're following direction, right? Like it's a very like prescribed process. And I remember telling one of my professors, and I went to Kansas State. It was great. Loved Kansas State. Super happy. A lot of virtual programs. The only way I could do it as a working adult. But I remember telling one of my professors, "Hey, I'm a trained chef." And they're like, "Well, that's great. We don't use that. We're dietitians. We don't cook." And I'm like, "How does that make sense, right? Like, how do we not cook, right? It's food, shouldn't we?" So that was another one of those we talked about earlier. That's like, this doesn't make sense. But getting through undergrad, and I might be like some of the other people out there. I didn't realize we had to do internships. That was new to me. I guess I didn't listen in that that orientation class. I wasn't paying attention, but when I found out it was an unpaid internship for, I don't know, whatever it was, 12 months or something, I was like, this is ridiculous. How do I get through this too? I just did undergrad. I still working as a chef, still had that full-time job. So going through undergrad and now going into my master's. And I applied to all the programs I could get it, that were in my area, in the Houston, Texas area. And I'll be honest here, nobody accepted me, like no one. I got into UTMB because they had open spots. They were like, "Hey man, you didn't fill out your application. We have an open spot. Do you want to come here?" I say that jokingly, but that was like, they took a chance on me. I took a chance on them, and it's one of the best decisions of my life. That was a combined master's program. I got a lot of exposure to researchers there. Professors I had there were like super kind, mentoring. No one in my family has graduate degrees, so it's not like I could go ask a bunch of other people. But going through that, getting the experience of one of my rotations, we did a cookbook for athletes. It was like dorm room cooking for your collegiate athletes. So I'm like getting to use the skills that I have, getting to use the sports side, working with an RD that I found really fascinating, doing something in my lane, working around my work schedule to make it happen, right? So that also allowed me to get that exposure into, well, what do we think about getting that doctorate, right? That hadn't crossed my mind, right? Like, yeah, I think I could do it, but just having someone encourage me and say, hey, you could do that. Like, it sounds like you're really interested in public health. It sounds like you're interested in this. You should go. Let me introduce you to so-and-so, and they can talk to you about, their career, or they can talk to you about what they've done, or what would be a good opportunity for you. So it's like these natural pathways of being open to listening and doing stuff. But it was definitely a long trajectory of getting that RD, right? So graduating with my master's and getting that credential really felt like a lot of success. Just, it was a lot of school. Six years after culinary school felt like a lot.
Well, and times have changed. I didn't get accepted in my first round of applying to internships either. I mean, I had probably a little too much fun and not as much studying in my undergrad, and you held multiple jobs. So I don't know how similar they are, but anyways, it is to show you that you may not get the first chance, but people will take the chance on you. And I also was the same way. Like, I didn't know I was going to do a PhD, but there became this fellowship when I was at Texas A&M Kingsville, and it went to main campus to do some like gut physiology research, which I have a degree in nutrition and microbiology. So like it really aligned. But I want to talk a little bit about,
right?
What?
Before microbiome, before it was popular, I guess.
Honestly, we did. I mean, we were doing microbiome sequencing. I mean, this is when early 2010s. I mean, this is when nutrition and microbiome was like first truly starting. And still to this day, I'm weary of it because I know the lab and I'm like, there's so much microbiome, so much of the microbiome we can't even characterize because they're anaerobic. I could get on for days, but I'm weary of that topic. But can you talk about how you made that decision to do a DrPH? So for those of you listening, there's, your traditional PhDs, there's a DrPH, which is a Doctor of Public Health. You have the EDD, which is an educational doctorate. And then you have something like DCN, which is a Doctor of Clinical Nutrition. So a lot of options on there. Why did you choose the public health route?
For me, like the bench science wasn't as interesting to me. At UTMB, there's a lot of protein researchers. They're doing, they take a sample out of a thigh. You eat different types of protein. You do some leg lifts, and it's one after the other. That type of studying, not my cup of tea. But we had some other exposure to more of that public health, which, where I'm from and the types of foods that people are eating. And I did a lot in my younger days, a lot of volunteering and with homelessness and, some feeding and cooking and things along that line. So really, the political side of it and why are we here? So I think the public health piece was much more interesting to me of how can we change a system versus looking at a small segment. So when I started looking into it, that's where somebody's like, hey, you should look into a doctorate of public health. And for me, I'm like, okay, what is the difference? And When I went through, to be honest, there really wasn't much different. Even my university, like one class was different. We all did stuff together, and then our dissertations were slightly like altered. Now things have shifted a lot more, I would say, where it's very much more practical, probably closer to like a education doctorate where you're in on specific projects and things. So more setting you up as a leader in a field to be able to go tackle a bigger problem. So it was I think the exposure of, talking to other people, this would be a good route for me. And then kind of in that same time period in my master's, I read a research paper. It was about chefs moving to schools. So it was during the Michelle Obama era. It was talking about like gardening and cooking and how that can help with nutrition. And I was like, this is amazing. This is exactly like, yeah, this is what I do. This is me, right? I see myself here. So actually found the author, got their contact information, emailed them. They called me, chatted with them. I don't even remember their name. I need to go back and look it up. But very encouraging conversation. That led me down the route of connecting with another mentor of mine, Dr. David Eisenberg, which again, very encouraging physician out of Harvard as well, that kind of in the food as medicine, culinary medicine, teaching kitchen world, that talks a lot about, making nutrition education a lot more practical. And that is like, yes, this is welcome to, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So happen chance within the Houston area, the UT School of Public Health, they had just built a teaching kitchen and a teaching garden. And they were like, I went and interviewed with them and they were like, this would be a great fit. Please come on. And it worked where it was, when I'm choosing the programs I got into, which for my doctorate, I got into a lot more programs this time around. I knew how to apply and interview, and it was a lot more successful. But the UT made the most sense for me just with what was available and the opportunity to come in and help support this program and kind of take it from ground level to really, develop some research, and also for my dissertation too. So that is, I think, what really led me there. And I took a break in between master's and doctorate. It wasn't like straight through. I did take some time to really think through, interview a lot, talk. And I encourage other people to do that too. Like it's, you have time in between, even if you're an older student. I was an older student. You really, if you're going to be, this, but if you're going to be researching a topic for 4, 5, 6 years, you probably should really care about it. You're going to be super miserable if not. You really, need to be for sure that you're certain you want to do it.
Yeah, mental health is a very serious thing when it comes to doctoral programs, because you're so focused on one topic for an extended period of time that your life is overrun. But if you're passionate about it, right? Like I was very passionate about educating physicians on nutrition. Like I loved, as a dietitian, how do we educate them and then increase this referral sourcing? Like that was, as a clinician, I really appreciate that. So it was a good driver for me, and it helped me, very similar to you, to land an academic position where you got to continue that level of work. So let's talk a little bit about how you were in academia, really focused on this lifestyle medicine, but then I want you to more quickly transition into what you do now today at Suvita Health.
Yeah. So kind of wrapping up, like UT, what was I doing? I was teaching classes, and in that teaching kitchen, we started what we call culinary medicine classes, which out of Tulane, health meets food now, culinary medicine. We were running their curriculum, helping Tim Harlan and Jacqueline Albin back in the day of like what are we building here? Leah Saris, et cetera, all of us on calls, talking through curricula, updating, moving through, teaching our students, right? So we started teaching medical students. We were teaching dental students. We had our dietetic students, collaboratively teaching the classes, supporting each other. I did that for about 3 years through my doctorate. And then when I graduated, I got brought on as faculty at McGovern Medical, assistant professor there, internal medicine, and then also health promotion behavioral sciences at the School of Public Health. So dual appointment, leading, the nutrition education, physician education at McGovern, and then also doing research. So a lot of the research that I did, and with our county hospital, we have, and I say this because this is kind of how I transitioned into where I am. County hospital, ER inundated, like it's overflowing. Big problem. This is pre-COVID. So this is not a COVID problem. It's pre-COVID. Can't see everybody. Start looking at, well, who are these patients that are in the ER? Well, it's preventable diabetes, right? Like these are diabetes cases where they don't need to be in the ER. This is a prevention visit. They just had an incident because they weren't taking medication. There's nothing happening, right? So we look back, well, are these patients food insecure? Starting to ask those questions, start surveying these patients, come to find out, yes. Okay, well, we need to get food in these folks' hands. So partnership with the food bank, but not stopping there, right? Can we build a farm on one of the properties, one of the hospital properties? Yes, we can. So let's do that. And then if we have the food, what we had seen in some of our earlier studies is preparing the food and teaching that. It goes hand in hand where you'll actually have better outcomes. So if you just hand out or distribute food, sometimes it actually could be a negative outcome because a lot of times foods that are being given, people are not familiar with them. So it's it would describe it as like the boiled Brussels sprout. It's just not palatable. It's not interesting. So my dissertation was surrounding that. Like, how do we, surveying, focus groups with patients, dietitians, providers at our county hospital, and then creating curricula designed to teach the dietitians how to teach culinary medicine to their patients. They've expanded that program. It's in a lot of the clinics in the county. So that was a big part of like my beginning of research. From there, I was doing these other culinary medicine classes and programs, and won a grant through Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I was doing it in some clinics across Texas, fully virtual. This is now past COVID point at this time, or during COVID point. We were already planning. We were ahead of the time, I'll be honest, ahead of COVID. We weren't thinking anything about COVID. We were just like, Texas is big. Like, if you've ever been in Texas,
to all the sites,
there is zero chance you can get to every person that needs it. It's just not going to happen. And even like coming to the medical center where we were located, you got to pay for parking. It's kind of drive through Houston traffic, which if you haven't been to Houston, it's kind of like LA. It's not enjoyable to sit in traffic. So people aren't going to come. And then you miss opportunities, right? So can we do this virtually? We had a really great setup, some great funders and folks donating money to give us great camera equipment. I mean, like, beautiful stuff, right? Where we can do live virtual classes. We can see in someone's home. We can talk with them. Hey, does this work? Does that not work? Great success with that program, fully virtual, never saw them in person, cooking at home with people's families across Texas, not just in one city. So we see some great reductions in A1C. So through that, I was approached on this startup that I'm in with lifestyle medicine where, hey, let's go do the same thing, but at scale. And I think for me, like I mentioned earlier, I'm one of those people that, why not? What's the worst that can happen? Let's go try this, right? So, tenure track position, fully funded, overfunded, really cush job, no reason to leave. But, this is a great opportunity to, learn something new. I hadn't been in business. This is now a for-profit business. Can we go and can we try this? And fast forward almost 4 years, we got 14 clinics. We're running the same types of interventions I was doing at UT, but at scale across 14 clinics, 3 times a year in cohorts. So I think it was the right decision. My dean did not think so. He also told me I was an idiot. When I told him, he was like, "You're an idiot." It is what it is. I probably would have felt the same way if I was him. But again, I think the reality is, like, sometimes people don't see the direction you're going or what could be there for you. And it could, things can still fail. Things can still go wrong. But it's really been an enjoyable, I think, pathway for me to learn the business side of healthcare. And it's not all good, right? It's nice to learn that. And also it helps us as researchers, as dietitians, understand, how do we sell what we're doing? How do we actually talk about nutrition? And how do we expand our role instead of decrease our role? So, it's been almost 4 years, but very happy to be in the role I'm in.
Leaving academia when you're in the I can't even think of the word, but like you're indoctrinated to kind of stay in academia. That's very
Yeah.
traditional academia. So,
Yep.
it was a challenge for me as well to leave academia, but you sometimes see the opportunity as, hey, I may be able to open another door here, and you
Hmm.
take a risk. It is a
Yep.
risk leaving
Yep.
academia when you have tenure or you have, funding to be able to go. But I think what you're doing in the food as medicine space is really aligned, and especially right now with everything that's going on. I mean, food as medicine is continuing to take off. So it's a really good spot. So what is like, give me a day to day. What does that look like?
I'm like Mr. Corporate now. I would say day to day is managing teams and structuring and visioning, like what direction do we go here? Like how do we run? I mean, similar to the professor role, right? You pull out you apply for a grant, you got to plan out what are the next 3 years, right? How do you apply your funding? So very similar, but just on the business side, where okay, what does this cycle look like? How do we structure classes? What's the minimum FTE you can use on something like this? What's the dosage look like for patients? So I think that kind of the big change for me from academia to business is like academia is like you want to do every single thing, right? And when you're applying for these grants, you have to, and it's like you can't do that. It's just not realistic, right? Like I would love to have a 32-week class. Not going to happen, right? It's not realistic. So when the rubber meets the road per se, it's really like how do we function in real life? And I think that's been like the day to day for me is understanding that, you know, while we need that, we need to know what is the best thing that we can operate under in that research setting when it comes to the practical application implementation, which I know you did a lot of implementation sciences, or I think you have, and kind of the IPE side and the interprofessional education, et cetera. For me, like on the implementation side and tailoring programs and interventions, learning to shift a little bit, learning that, okay, well, we have a different style of staffing model here. So what we've done over here, we can't make it work. We do have to model it and structure it different to apply. So I think, again, going back to like my education, that was very helpful in understanding how to tailor these types of programs and events and everything else. So day to day looks a lot like, I think like a lot of people, a lot of emails, a lot of messages, a lot of using AI to speed things up, and a lot of planning, right? And then planning for when things don't go right, which naturally in anything that involves humans, things always change and adjust. I think another learning thing for me is as dietitians, we're often can be a little siloed on let's say the business side of healthcare, where you don't understand all the pieces that go together. Being here has taught me a lot of what goes into how you can actually function, what you have to do to actually get reimbursed, what you have to do to actually, make sure that what we're doing, compliant and everything else. So it's really the business side that I've spent a lot of time learning on.
I liked what you said earlier is you almost took your learnings from your academic job on just project management and you applied it. I think a lot of people, when they want to, let's say, leave the clinical field, they don't know how to curate or create a resume for a niche job opportunity. But we have the skills as nutrition professionals. We have the clinical skills, we have some business, we have communication skills, we have marketing. I mean, in academic training, you do have a little bit of everything. And so it's how do you showcase what you do in your current role to be able to be applicable towards a role like this. So I thought that was really clever. And I think you're right. It's so funny you talk about the implementation science because I see it in my role, as I've transitioned out of academia too. Like academia is really good to pilot test things to see like what's the feasibility, how does it work? And then I think in industry, you take that and you say, okay, what's actually realistic of what I
Mm-hmm.
can do? Yeah, you're never going to get a 30+ week. I was in a 6-month clinical trial with my daughter, and like I miss half of the food frequency questionnaires. And I know, like I'm a
You're like
researcher.
trying as hard as you can. Like I'm trying to help you. I swear I am. Yeah.
Totally, but it's when you are in studies, and I encourage every single person who's listening, participate in a research study, understand what goes into it, because I don't think people realize like, yeah, they want 6-year trials or 5-year trials. And it's like, that's people's lives you're talking about, right? that it takes
And I
a
mean,
lot of time. They have to commit. They have to go to the education sessions. They have to eat the food that you're providing. Like all of those sound good in theory, but like what if I get a food prescription box and it has cauliflower and I don't want cauliflower tonight, but that's what's on my menu, right? And so I think that's where, and I know you presented at Teaching Kitchen Collaborative last year of like, how do you use AI and being better to curate programs that have a little bit more modifiable and flexibility? Because I think that's what you're going to need for a lot of these clinical implementation studies, because people are not rigid. They don't want to follow a meal plan. They want to follow a general guide and then make your own.
it's
Would you
getting
say the same?
yeah, it's getting better too. I think kind of speaking broadly here, a lot of RDs can be very fearful of tech and things, and rightly so. There can be some some founded fear of will it take my job, or none of us can predict exactly which direction and things. But I think that the message from me, and at least what I've been experiencing, is like learn how to use these tools, because it can be so beneficial to patients. And I think one of the prettiest thing I've seen as of late is the taking charting time away. So none of us in the healthcare field went in to be, whether it be a physician, dietitian, nurse, went into the field to chart. Like no one. If you did, I don't know what's wrong with you. Like it's not something that we like to do. Like I love charting, not something I've ever heard from any team member, right? So AI charting is amazing, right? Like you review it, it's getting very accurate, it's great, you can catch things and do some coaching. It doesn't remove the human piece, right? It actually gives that back to us. So I can make eye contact with my patient. I can connect more. And your point of like an RD writing a meal plan. I mean, all of us have been asked, can you write me a meal plan? Like, who likes writing a meal plan? I don't want to write a meal plan.
No
but
one
we can
likes
use
writing
these
a meal
tools
plan.
to create some things, right? And it can be very useful for some of our patients that really need that. They need that. Are they going to follow it? Maybe not, but at least they have it, right? Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefit there. And it's kind of getting outside of that fear that I think a lot of RDs have, and not just RDs in general in healthcare. A lot of us practitioners have a little bit of a fear of the future of what this means for us. But I think there's some ample opportunity for us to utilize the resources and tools. And if we don't, then other folks will, and then they won't have the expertise that we have, influencing those models, et cetera. So I think it's important for us to be involved.
Yeah, and dietitians and nutrition experts need to have a seat at the table, because you're right. The programs and food as medicine will continue to go on if dietitians are not there. So we've already talked about how science, you've brought into real life. So we're not going to dive too deep on that. But, Wes, you've had quite a successful career in a lot of different niches and areas. So what's been your favorite or something you're most proud of so far?
I love teaching at med school. I think it's probably, again, looking at my career, why I went into the field in the first place. It was I remember my first lecture in med school, it felt very like full circle for me. Like I remember that doctor, my grandfather not following the doctor's advice. Who wants to eat dry toast? Like there's just, you had a heart attack. Your life is over. You get to have no enjoyment anymore, right? Instead of like, okay, well, like we can make some adjustments and changes. So really being able to, work with medical students, medical residents to talk about when you see a patient with diabetes, what does that mean? And what is the practical pieces you can use to talk about? When should you refer to a dietitian? You know what? Actually, who knows what a dietitian is? And that's something we would survey all of our, like each of our classes, about 250 students in these medical school classes, a lot of students, right? Vast majority, no concept. You're looking at MS1s, no concept what a dietitian is. No idea. I mean, I can't fault them. I didn't know what a dietitian was until I was, I had one as a, as a professor. So it wasn't out there. Our field, not a lot of people know about it, unfortunately, right? Y'all deliver like the shakes and stuff. You're dietary, but like any sense of expertise, and that's where like a big light is clicked for me, is that it's really about when you do interprofessional education, it's about understanding each other's roles. And I think from the physician side, they start to say, you know what, this person actually, they do know a lot, and nutrition's more complicated than I thought it was. So I should refer to them. This is great. I actually like these people. These are good. And then on the dietitian side, it's, oh my God, they're not a scary physician. I can actually talk to them. They're normal people. They just expect me to actually, when I have a recommendation, to actually have facts behind it, right? Like, which is very fair, right? It's their license on the line. So I think our model was, in a teaching kitchen, we would pair one dietetic student with like 4 or 5 physician students or dental students, right? Or nursing students. So they're getting that connection where they learn about each other's roles. And, come to find out when they graduate, these folks are, again, much more likely to refer. And you and I have talked about this a lot. I'll go on a soapbox here.
It's like we have the exact same learnings. I mean, so you were in Texas,
Yeah.
I was in Florida.
Yeah.
The learnings are identical, right? And that's something that I used to teach dietitians and nutrition students too. Go introduce yourself and tell them what you do, because they have no idea. And that's not just physicians. That's your nursing staff. That's your rehab staff. That's your physical therapist. That's your pharmacist. Because the term dietitian, they think it's just delivering the shakes, or they think you're in the kitchen making a diet order or whatever it might be. So I think we could have a whole episode on that, but we don't talk too deep into that on this. So I have some questions for you, Wes. What suggestions or tips would you have for someone who's interested in this, like, food as medicine roles and spaces right now?
There's a tremendous amount of opportunity, right? Like a tremendous amount. And I think, kind of, if you just look at like the practice paper we have, I think it's 2017, talks about interprofessional education. Like, the more we do it, the more likely those folks are to refer to us. And that's what the data says. It's not like your opinion, my opinion. It's the data, right? So with that being said, get out there, speak up. I'll share a story. When I was an intern, this physician, well-meaning physician, wrote a diet order that was not what the patient needed. And when I brought it up to my supervisor, they were like, "Oh, he's a doctor. You just let it go." And I was like, "Why? Why would I let it go? Why? Well, he's a doctor. You don't question the doctor." And I was like, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, I know I'm a student, but I'm gonna go like talk to about it because like this is clearly, it was a mistake, and we need to correct it. Like, this is a problem." And I did, and they were very nice about it, and we got it corrected. So like, to me, it was this fear of, like, oh, I can't do that. So step out of that, because there's no point in that. Like, we're all professionals here, and people serve different roles, and you need to address everything with respect. But that's the number one, is like, have the confidence to, like, you do know a lot. You went to school for a long time, and you've been practicing. So get out there and speak up. Number two, like, don't be afraid that someone's going to take your job. That's also one of the, anytime we hear about, physician education or something like that, you'll have well-known dietitians, social media. This is dumb. We need to protect our own. And I'm like, again, opposite of what the science tells us. We're protecting crumbs when we really should be, expanding the role, right? So just doing the math, I think like what the Academy says, we have like 115,000 dietitians or something like that. Was it like 40 million Americans that have diabetes, and maybe like 100 and something that have pre-diabetes? So we're going to see all of them. Like, we need more dietitians. And again, we're not even getting enough referrals for those that exist right now. So how do we get more? We start talking about this more to the other folks. So I think that's one of the biggest pieces, is stop being our worst enemy, right? Where we don't need to block this. We really need to step in and lead it. So that comes from when we make these announcements, like, if you have a med school nearby, volunteer to do a lecture. There's probably some opportunity to go meet some folks, join in a class. If you're into the culinary medicine thing, it's a great opportunity for talking, doing nutrition ed. I got to share this story too, Kristen, because this is another one of those you're never going to do this situation. So when we first had the idea of doing culinary medicine at our medical school, we offered it to one of the special interest groups in med school, right? We're a school of public health, special interest groups of the students. So it's like the wellness group. We offer it for free. We don't have, we can fund it for a little while, a few classes. They love it. But we're like, hey, this is coming to an end because we can't sustain this without some funding. So, go talk to your dean. And we had already asked the dean, like, hey, we're going to do this. And they're like, no, you're never going to be doing that at our school. Well, the students wanted it so much, they went and knocked on the door, and come to find out, they had enough push and pull that the dean came and paid for it, right? So it was this thing of like, I think this generation is very hungry for knowing things. A lot of, practicing physicians and, providers, sick and tired of seeing patients day in, day out and seeing them with the same results. They want to be able to deal with the root cause. They don't want to just say, oh, well, here's this, here's that, see you in a few months and you're going to be worse. So if you kind of like step back and go, these folks are not my enemy. We're actually in this together. We're on a team. We serve different roles, but we can work together. You go a lot further in life. You go a lot further in your roles, and really it just makes life a lot easier. So it's not super practical recommendations, but more, I guess, philosophical is just how you approach it, is that we're on the same team and we can work together.
I feel like you and I are lockstep. I mean, I get so frustrated on social media when people are upset about physician education, but they also, Wes, to their credit, they haven't sat in our shoes as academics and learning. This is like, if you want to increase referrals, you have to educate them to be able to understand nutrition is complex. Nutrition isn't eat more fruits and vegetables. Like that's not nutrition, right? And so that will allow for more referrals, that will allow for better insurance coverage, right? There's a downstream impact there. So it's funny, you're talking and I'm like, yep. So I think we're spot on. So my last question, Wes, as we close out, and I'm really curious your answer with your food as medicine experience and background. If you had a crystal ball, what do you think is coming next in nutrition?
I mean, I wouldn't have seen the as big of AI bubble as we're in now. I would say a few years ago. So I think public interest is not waning; it's going to keep going. So it's a really ripe time for all of us to step in, whether it be things in the nutrition education side, things on the AI side, but nutrition is in the media more than ever before. It's definitely an area where we can benefit a lot as dietitians if we're willing to put ourselves out there. So
when you've given a lot of examples, right? I know you've been involved in Teaching Kitchen Collaborative. You're an academy spokesperson, right? There's a lot of ways that you can get involved as a dietitian or nutrition expert, whether it's through research, through communications, through trainings at your facilities or with your patients population. So I feel like you gave a lot of really practical examples. No matter who's listening, there is a way for you to get involved in culinary medicine and food as medicine if that speaks your interest and you're interested in that. So Wes, it's always great to have you on. I know our paths are going to continue to cross. I'll see you at Fancy and beyond. But if you like the show, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a review. But most importantly, check out the next episode, because every episode I bring on a different dietitian and nutrition expert to share their story and give you tips and advice on how to be successful.